Right then, I'm Lee. If you don't know me right now, I don't know why you're here. We're going to go through nutrition today. First thing that I want to say is at the end of today, I kind of want everything filled out on the sheets of paper. And you should technically have a plan to go away and do everything you need to yourself depending on what your goals are. At the end of each kind of section, you're going to get 2 minutes to fill in the little bit, so don't feel like you've got to fill that in now. A lot of this is the fundamentals around nutrition. There's a load more that you can dive into, particularly things like psychological and emotional stuff that you can get into with eating. Today isn't really about that, and that does come into it, but that is so individualized, it'd do it a bit of a disservice if we talk a little bit about it today and not dive right into it. So if you are someone that has maybe like tendencies to be like obsessive or over emotional about food and nutrition in particular, just take this for exactly what it is, but then also add those things in. So you, for example, if you're someone that emotionally eats, that will be something that will come into play today. So it's not just, I'm not just saying that the numbers on the board are exactly what you need to do, although it is, there's so many other things that come into play. First thing we've got is, this is my new brand, Newburn Fitness. I need a clicker because I'm going to have to walk over every time. Today we're going to cover what your baseline is, which you currently all have. You've already ticked that one off. What fat loss and what you can do to get towards fat loss. Muscle gain, to what you can do to gain a little bit more muscle or focus on gaining muscle. And then performance, or how you could do all of those things together. They all do interlink. So starting off with baseline. Why you're here, apart from you've got now better to do with your Saturday, hopefully you've got something that you want to do with your nutrition, and it probably ties quite closely in to why you train. So you've got a couple of things as to why you do CrossFit regularly. So away from nutrition for a second, can I have from 3 people one reason why you train as regularly as you all do? Build muscle, cool, yeah. Get strong. Makes you feel better, cool. That's what I was kind of going down. The feeling of it, yeah, it makes you feel better. You get to see your friends. Hopefully you enjoy seeing myself and the other coaches that are in here. That should be motivating in itself, seeing everybody else do well. Everyone will have their own personal goals. They might have like commitments in the family, and they're saying, I want to be a strong dad, for example, make a good example. Connor, you might want to be stronger than your dad. That's also a good example. There's loads of things that could play into it. The strongest brother, yeah? You know that one, Cal, don't you? But there's loads of other things that come into play, and the reason why you keep coming back is because it's fun and it makes you feel better. There's no reason as to why you can't start that with nutrition. The other one is, it's a little bit less glamorous, you pay for it. And because you pay for it, it probably motivates you to go. Yeah? If you paid £7.99 down at the Pure Gym down the road, chances are you wouldn't go as much as you come here, because part of it, you've got skin in the game and all the other fancy bits that you enjoy it, yeah? So when we go into the next session, think about some things as to what your like reason why is. Your baseline. Your baseline is essentially like your essentials of what you currently do at the moment. If I was to say to you, we're going to start saving money, and you've got no idea how much money you've got in your bank account, you've got no idea how much you spend, and you've got no idea how much money you're going to earn in that month, how can you start learning how to save money or building up to some sort of financial goal? And the same applies with nutrition. You all currently do nutrition as it stands. You all eat, I hope, or maybe you don't eat and you've got a really low budget, I don't know. We all do all this already. We all train already, and then we've all got all lifestyle stuff that we all already do. We're going to find what your baseline is, and then we're going to work from there. And then you can start doing small steps. A bit like when you first come into CrossFit and we don't go, do a muscle up. We find out, can you do a pull-up? Do you need to start with ring rows? Can you dangle from the bar yet? If you could do them things, maybe we move you into gymnastics. There'd be no point in Rick coming in day one and me saying, we're going to do some banded pull-ups today. That'd be pointless, right? In the same way, it'd be pointless saying to a brand new person, go and do a muscle up. So you find where your baseline is with anything within nutrition. And then from your baseline, you choose some of your measurable stuff. Your happiness, your performance, your weight, your aesthetics, sort of like subjectively, how you look, your body size, your clothes, your habits. All of those things are things that you can use rather than just weight on its own. So if stepping on the scales, if you are changing your nutrition today or you change in the future and ultimately you become happier but nothing changes on the scales, that's still a job done for me. I'm super happier. Your weight is so irrelevant, but that's the one thing that people focus on. The same for your performance. If you start performing better, you start hitting PBs, you start feeling better in training. Again, that's way better than the scales shifting in the way you want them to go. The way your clothes fit, if your habits become better and you find yourself not relying on food, or you find yourself not blowing it out at the weekend and going on a bender at 5 a.m. in the morning in McDonald's. Or you could factor that in, and you could do that. Maybe you've got your nutrition dialed so much that you can do that. That's we'll go with that. But the point being is there is so many actual measurables that you can look at that will then show that you are actually making progress, right? So next, that's a little saying from a guy called Peter Drucker, who I actually have no idea who it is, but he says what gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed improves. I believe is the full saying, which makes a lot of sense. If you're not measuring it, how can you manage it? And if you're not managing it, how can it improve? So the first step, what you do from here, if you take nothing away from today, I want you to find some way that you can start measuring your progress, if it is that you want to start making progress, and what that thing is that you're going to measure. You'll track in some form, and Lee with Hair recommends doing a food diary if you're really serious about it, in the same way that they say track your squats, the weight that you do, or the deadlifts, whatever you're doing in training. A food diary is a really easy way to start improving, and you can change absolutely nothing. Just start writing a food diary, and you can use apps that we'll come into in a second. You've got your body weight, pictures, and then your ability within the gym that you can also start to learn and track. So take 2 minutes now. On your sheet, you've got 2 squares that I want you to just focus on. Just write a general goal down as to what your desired outcome would be within 3 months, 6 months, a year's time. Just think 11-star experience. That's the result that you want. That's the end result. And then I want you to just write a quick one-liner as to why that's important to you, and then how much you want it on the scale, just from 1 to 10. Just circle one of the numbers. I wish he was all this quiet in class. It'd be so much easier. It would be, to be fair. I'm more surprised that Aiden's keeping so quiet over there. See you tiptoeing around. You even took your shoes off. So you're popping down your goal, your outcome, whatever that might be. It could be that you want to be monster strong. Could be that you want to look even more sexy than you do right now. Could be that you want to fit in your old clothes. Could be that you want to grow out of your current clothes. Could be that you want to get really strong at CrossFit. Could be that you want to become RX. Could be that you've, I don't know, got a grandkid on the way. Surprise, Andy. Could be anything. Could be something that you want to work towards. Has anyone seen that John Lewis advert where the old guy's got the kettlebell and he's training loads? And it's to pick his granddad. Yeah, how powerful is that? What a lovely sentiment to try really hard. And then, how much do you want it? I don't want anyone ticking 1, otherwise you can head out the door. And you're not taking any biscuits with you. And then your baseline, just quickly, what you think will be the best for you. It might change as we move through the presentation. Choose something that you will track, something that you'll measure, and something that you'll manage. So they could be the same thing. It could be as a very simple one that everyone goes towards. I'm going to track my food, so you'll keep a food diary. You're going to measure your aesthetics by taking pictures, and then you'll manage that by attending this presentation or spending less on weekends, or doing a month of not going out. Could be, depending on what your goal is. Right, while you're still writing, you can still write if you get any ideas from what people say. But let's just quickly go around the room. Rio, I'm going to start with you, mate.
Yep.
Tell me what your goal is.
Basically to lose weight and like so and just feel better physically.
Yeah, cool. I like that. That's kind of, in my world, that's what everybody wants. Yeah, and that's no reason why it can't be that. And you're already doing a massive part of that by training so much. Cool. Angela, what is your why?
Oh,
The why, yeah.
Makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Confident.
Yep.
Healthy.
Yep.
And also because I want to live longer.
Yep. Cool. Yep.
And have a better mental health.
Yes. Perfect. Again, I think all of those things, training plays a huge role in that. And then if you can dial in your nutrition or whatever you need to improve on within that space and make them work together, there's no reason why they're all powerful motivators, right? Matt, I'm going to jump over how much you want it because I'm assuming you circled 10.
No,
9. Oh, close. That's good enough, to be fair.
It says I'll do anything, but
You won't do anything.
I won't do anything.
Okay, good, I like that. To be fair, if you told me I had to do anything, but it was like wear a United kit, no. Yeah, there's always a line that you've got to cross. What's something that you're going to track? Yeah, cool. Andy, what are you going to track?
Kind of 3 things. I do weight tracking anyway.
Yep.
Food tracking.
Yep.
Measurements.
Yep, cool. Connor, what's your goal? Perfect, like it. I was going to say your why, but I imagine it's something along the line of Carson.
It's like a mixture.
Yeah, go on then, what's your why?
It's to be a strong one, to get rid of my momentum, and to go RX.
Cool, I like it. Jess, what do you track, a measure, or manage? What any one of those? Yeah, that's all right. Okay then. What if you 1 to 10? What if you scored it?
I put 8.
8. Cool, I like it. That's honest. Still pretty high. Cal, goal.
Stronger, fitter.
Like it. KK, what are you going to start to track, measure, or manage? Yeah. Food and weightlifting. Yeah, cool, I like it. Is that your main goal, the weightlifting? Yeah. Tell me any of your things that you've got on your board. One that you feel comfortable with saying.
I put my goal is weight loss and to perform better.
Like it?
And my goals are smaller belly.
Smaller belly, cool. Very specific. I like that. Yeah, cool. Right, so you've got a couple of things that you can go there. And the next section is all about fat loss. So if you've got something in your aims, which I'd say pretty much everyone will be able to take something from the fat loss section in a minute, I would do a couple of things as like my absolute essentials for fat loss. My first one would be, contrary to what I was just saying before, I would track my weight every single day. When I track my weight every single day, I've become so numb to what the numbers say on the scales, it means absolutely nothing to me. And I used to get really, really caught up about what the numbers were on the scales. Whether at one point it was too high and it kept going up, and then at one point it was too low and I couldn't pick it up. And now it's currently, I'm trying to shift it down and I want it to go down, and it isn't currently going down, but I've still stepped on the scales probably every single day, barring like being away from my house for the past maybe like 6 years. And it's just routine to the point where when I brush my teeth, I feel no emotion towards brushing my teeth. In the same way when I wake up in the morning and stand on the scales, I see no emotion connected to that number. That isn't for everybody, but it's a really, really easy way to track your weight. And as your weight changes, it can be super motivating. If it goes down, take it as a motivating factor. If it goes up, take it as I want to try a little bit harder, rather than it being a demotivating thing. And like I said before, there is a lot of emotional stuff that goes around that. If it doesn't work for you, come away from the scales, because it doesn't really matter. Your actions that you do away from the scales are what's going to make the scales shift, not stepping on the scales. The second thing, I would recommend using NutriCheck. It's a UK-based app that you can track with, so all the things line up. MyFitnessPal is good, but it's based on a US database, so there's a lot of like American stuff, particularly like in the measurements in like a cup of something, and it's like, what's a cup of something? But a UK NutriCheck is fantastic. You've got Box. You can actually make personal goals and notes on BoxMate if you want to use that. Your body weight, which you've already covered. Pictures and clothes are a really good one, because you can step completely away from the scales. If you're doing pictures, I'd take a picture every week or maybe every 2 weeks of yourself in the same position at the same time of day, either in the same clothes or in no clothes if you want to keep it to yourself. Or if you've got OnlyFans, you can make a bit of money off it. But just do the same scenario, whatever you do, the same time of day. Don't do your first one in the morning and then your next one after a 5 a.m. bender at McDonald's the night after. Or at 5 a.m. in the morning when you roll in and you're like, whoa, I look mint. I'm sorry, I'm picking on you out, Jackie, I'm sorry. But yeah, whatever you choose the same thing, and the same for clothes. If you've got an item of clothing that you know fits you currently, you could use that as a measure. Leave it out on the side so you can put it on. You can see how it feels. You can take it off. Equally, you could leave it out, and then every time you see that item of clothing, that should become a motivating thing. Bit like a lot of people do it with like wedding dresses, or like a dress that they've got for, say, like the Christmas party or something. You leave it out, and then every morning you wake up, it sees you, it sets you on the right path for that day, rather than it being something that you don't really think about. So I'd say if you're using clothes, leave that set of clothes out, and then you can constantly try them on and see how you change. But set every week, maybe every 2 weeks, to see how you feel and how you change. If it doesn't feel good, let that be a sign that you need to maybe dial things in a little bit, which is fine. If it feels mint, you're doing the right thing. Keep doing more of the right thing. Yeah? And then weekly notes are just very subjective, a bit like a diary. Did I do well this week? Do I need to do differently? Next up, fat loss. Probably what everyone ties in with nutrition in itself. Fat loss comes down to a really, really simple equation. If you take away everything that you actually do, it is the simple eat less, move more that you hear all the time. It genuinely is that simple to manipulate your weight. In theory. In practice, it's like so difficult that there's so many things that really a job as a nutrition coach, you become more of a therapist. It isn't just maths, because if it was, you'd be able to just put some numbers in, get some numbers out. But it's really important to understand that these are the underlying principles of it. In the same way that if I was to use the money example, if I'm telling you to save money, it's dead easy. Stop spending, earn more money. You get more money overall. But then when you see something outside that you really, really want, or someone pisses you off and you want to buy something online because it makes you feel better, or you want to go and treat yourselves because you've just had an occasion, and you're like, yeah, but it's my birthday and I want to really splash out, those things don't come into account. And the same for nutrition, right? So the more you put in and the less you put out, your weight increases. So you tip the scales in favor of the in part, which is all your food. You will stay the same if those are matched. If you're spending the same amount as you're earning, you will stay the same. Things won't change. Money is a really easy way to think about it. And then what everyone wants to do really is lose weight ultimately, and you need to in some way put more out than you put in. And you can actually keep the in exactly the same as what you're currently doing now and just increase your activity. That means that even though this square doesn't get bigger, this square gets bigger, so it weighs more, it tips it in that way. So you actually don't need to change anything about your food. You can lose weight. However, you could do both, and then you become like a double-edged sword. And you all train really, really hard anyway. So I personally would say I'd focus more on the nutrition side of things and seeing things where you can dial things in. The in part is something that is totally controllable. You can't control what happens on the scales. You can't control what happens to your body fat. You can't control how your muscles grow. But what you can control is what you eat, if we're being fairly blunt about it. Everything that goes past your mouth, food and drink, or whatever else, wherever your mind's taking you, all counts as calories, and that will all count towards that in part that we were just talking about. And they're the things that you can definitely control. You can control that with doing a food diary, like I mentioned. If you want to not do a food diary, I don't do food diaries anymore because I find them a little bit boring, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you guys will find them boring. You can change your portion sizes. So just as a blanket rule, you can reduce what you're currently having. You can use a smaller plate. You could have, if you normally have, I don't know, steak, chips, and veg, you could quite literally just cut your meal in half and everything that you have, and then without tracking at all, you've reduced your calories by half that meal. That's just changing your portion sizes. That's super simple, really. But you can also do the other things where you manipulate different parts of your meal. But if we keep it really simple, just control your portion sizes. Restrictions, what people tend to go when they think about nutrition. I'm not having takeaways anymore. I'm not eating chocolate anymore. I'm not having sweets. I'm not having dessert. I'm not having alcohol, whatever it is. You can put restrictions in place that are a rule. You can do that, but really what that's teaching you is that chocolate's bad, that takeaways are bad, that biscuits are bad. Hopefully you'll see that I've brought biscuits in because biscuits aren't bad. It's how much you want, how much you can have. Can you actually restrict yourself to have one biscuit with your brew rather than the 4 that everyone has? I don't know. You might have a stronger willpower than I do. And then some easy swaps. If you're someone that has fizzy drinks, just go for the diet alternative. Every time me and Carl go out for a meal, I always get Coke Zero, or most of the time I get Coke Zero. Carl gets normal Coke. And every time I'm thinking, why? Because to me, I'd rather have 100 odd less calories per Coke and have 0 calories than what Carl likes to taste, so he wants to have the full fat one. Yeah? I think it tastes the same, but he thinks it tastes different. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. But also, if we take Cal into context, that advice is really good advice, but if Cal wants to get stronger, he could probably do with the extra calories, so it's all very contextual. But as a dead easy swap, can you swap out diet drinks? And then you don't feel like you're changing anything. You're still having fizzy drinks. Fizzy drinks aren't bad, but the calories that are in the drinks are. Same for fruit juice. Fruit juice is typically a healthy thing, right? If you're having orange juice all the time, that's fine. It is really, really healthy. But for what you're having, you're probably having because you enjoy the taste, not because it's packed full of vitamin C like everyone pretends, or because it's a fruit. It's just the thing that people think. Have 0 cordial and have an orange flavoured drink, and you could still drink the same amount, but you could save yourself hundreds and hundreds of calories just by doing that one simple swap. Yeah. I have got a little worksheet which I'll send through to you all of all of these things, of little tips and tricks that you can do to make things a little bit easier. So the controllables that you've just done, the energy out part, there's only a little bit that you can control on the energy out. If we're going into it, your basal metabolic rate is what you just burn, what you're currently burning right now. If you just fell asleep for the next week, you would still burn an amount of calories, which is why when people are in a coma, when they wake up, they're typically all withered away and nothing's there anymore because your brain has to still work, your lungs have to still work, your heart has to still work. In the same for when you're moving out and around, you then move into this thing called NEAT, which is probably going to be one of the more important things that we're going to talk about in a second. You've got EAT, which is what you currently do in the gym, and I'll break them down as to what they are. And then you've got this TEF, which is what you get from food. First thing I want to say is look at how big this portion is. You currently do a hell of a lot in terms of combating what you put in with what you already do. This will go up the more muscle you have, because your body requires more energy to sustain what it currently looks like, and muscle requires being replenished. Fat doesn't need to be replenished. Fat just stays as it is, which is the dead easy scenario is Rick eats 4,000 calories a day, and if you've not noticed, he's got a shed load of muscle on him. The reason why is because muscle is much harder to keep and you need more calories. So if you're thinking about just fat loss and you think about just driving the calories down, that's fine for a time being, but think about ways that you can actually drive your muscle up, which we'll talk about later on. These two then. EAT in both stands for exercise activity thermogenesis. Just think about it as activity. This is exercise activity. This is non-exercise activity. This is what you do in the gym because it's classed as exercise. This is what you don't do in the gym because you don't class it as exercise. Think walking, cleaning your house, going to work, moving your hands, blinking, fidgeting, all these sort of things that you don't class as exercise, all still burn calories. Yeah. These are the things that you're going to manipulate. You already do a lot of exercise. You can increase this block by doing extra exercise. You could quite easily stay after the gym and do a very steady 20-minute session on the bike. You could quite easily do the mile loop. You could quite easily do some bodybuilding at the back. You could quite easily do some extra little bits that will increase this bit. But for weight loss, this bit is probably the best thing to do. Think about, you've got 24 hours in the day. You probably spend 8 of them sleeping. You spend 1 of them in the gym. That means you've got 13 hours that you could be doing stuff in. Now, I'm not saying you have to do loads in that time, because we've all got lives. We've got to eat during that time. We've got to work during that time. Can you cycle to and from places like Rio does? Can you walk? Can you take the stairs at work? Can you just stand up at your desk for 10 minutes every hour? All of those things will add up over time, and you'll become that person that then increases this over time. And if you just get into a habit of taking the stairs at work and not the elevator, that then over time, 10 calories one day, 10 calories the next day, 10 calories the next day, 10 calories the next day, over the course of a year, you've burnt hundreds of thousands more calories just by taking the stairs, and you're now the person that takes the stairs, and it feels no extra effort. Yeah, those are the little things that I would say increase. This is all about sticking with your nutrition. Being average is best. It's really difficult in CrossFit, for example, when every time you put weight on the bar, you want to increase weight and you want to hit a PB, you want to hit a little bit heavier, you want to do a little bit more every single time. With nutrition, it couldn't be the opposite. If you have one fantastic meal, which is like a PB, and then the rest of your meals are garbage, and they're really high calorie, or you smash a packet of biscuits afterwards, it's almost irrelevant having that one good meal. What you're better off doing is just being averagely good across the board. If every single meal during the day, you do something like you do the portion control, and let's say just as a little bit of a easy solution, every single meal, you aren't allowed to clean your plate. Apart from the fact that would drive Sophie mad. If I said every single meal, I'm going to leave a portion of the rice or whatever like that, maybe I'm cutting out 50 calories. But if I did that on every single meal, if I do that 10 times a week, I'm saving myself 500 calories, right? It's a bit of an unorthodox approach, but the simplicity of it is that if you just choose one thing that you do at every single meal, it could be that at every meal you cover half of your plate with veg. Veg are really low calorie. That could be the thing that you do. Rather than doing one portion that's full of veg and you have one big salad, and then at night you get a curry. It kind of easily wipes it out. So on a micro scale, you want to kind of do one good meal, one good training session, one cracked egg, which is a little bit of a saying that I'll go through in a meal. One bad meal equal it, and one bad training session doesn't ruin all your hard work. If you have one bad meal, it's fine. If you have one bad training session, you don't lose all your muscle, you don't lose all your fitness. And the one cracked egg is an analogy that if you're making an omelette and you've got 6 eggs and you drop 1 egg on the floor, you don't just throw the other 5 on the floor and go, what's the point now, I'm not making an omelette. You make a 5-egg omelette, right? So if you've got a plan today and you go away and then you get home and someone goes, oh, it's Doris's birthday, I brought you home some cake. You can have some cake if you want to. And just remember that doesn't ruin everything. Don't just then think disaster mode and write it off. One good meal turns into one good week, or one good day, one good week, one good month, one good year, and then you start to trend. Within that good year, you could have had multiple weekends out. 5 a.m. I don't mind those. But it still means it's a good year. If 6 of those days of the week, you're absolutely bang on, and then one of the days you do something a little bit different, that's fine. Has anyone got any questions so far? No? Right. We've got a little bit of maths for you to do. On the page, you've got the numbers down. Depending on how you want to think about it, you can either think about it the fun way, which is the hare, the tortoise, and the tree, which is a way to think about how fast you're moving. We all know the story of the tortoise and the hare. Or if you want to go a little bit more sciencey, you can maintain a moderate approach or an aggressive approach. If you know your body weight in kilograms, you're going to do some maths. I want you to just write down, without me telling you what they are, write down the numbers. 22 times your body weight in kilograms equals a certain number. The same for 25, the same for 30, and then you can times that big number by 7. If you don't know what your body weight is, just go with what you think your body weight is or what your goal body weight is. That is also fine.
What is it? Is it just your body weight times 7, or is it all times altogether? Is it that times that times that, or is it that times that?
So you want to do
I've just done all them.
you want to do 22 times your body weight.
Yep.
Yeah. So write that. What's 22 times your body weight?
Right, okay, I've just done it all in one. Right.
That's okay. Yeah.
91 times 20. Yeah, so that's it.
So I would write. So if we do this one for
I've
you.
done it, I've done
Yeah,
it
that
right.
would go there. So this one would be 2002. Then you
Right.
times that by 7.
Ah, so 14. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. There you go. And then you do 25 times 91. You can pop that number there, and then times it by 7. Pop that number there. Same for 30.
Oh, sweet, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, nice one.
Anyone else need a bit of help? Done? Done? Yeah, so whatever the result is that you get for the 22, 25 or 30, times that by 7. Flew through that, didn't you, Andy? Yeah. Maths is a strong point, right? Right. If you haven't got numbers all down, don't worry too much. As long as you've got one set of numbers down, it will make a little bit more sense. Are you okay on the floor? Yeah, cool. Right. I talked about numbers and science before, about the in and the out. If we're just thinking now as this number, as what you have going in, forget about what your calories are on the way out. If you've got a watch, if you do calories on the bike, if you've got like a Fitbit and you do steps or whatever like that, think of the things going out now as exercise points. They're not calories. Just completely forget about them. If anything, they create like a safety net that if you do something wrong in this part, the things that you've done to put out, the calories that you've done as output, create you like a buffer for making mistakes. The numbers that you've got down are what you can put in. If you want to take an aggressive approach, it's perfectly fine, you'll get faster results. But if your body weight is, Rio, do you mind me using you? Yeah. If we go your 22 number, your body weight was 91 kilos, right?
Yeah.
And then your result from that was?
On the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2002.
2002, cool. So for Rio, for an aggressive approach, he's got 2002 calories every single day. That's why we times it by 7. So then the 7 outcome will be 14,000 and something, so 14,014. That's his weekly allowance. Now your body doesn't care when the week starts and stops in the same way Don't care when a day starts and stops. Don't care when a month starts and stops. Whatever budget you want, you're going to budget that number across the week. So if you've got 2,000 calories every day, but you've got a birthday party coming up and you know that you need a little bit more, let's say Tuesday is the birthday party, I could essentially do 1,500 on the Monday, and on the Tuesday I could add that 500 that I've saved onto the Tuesday, and I'd have 2,500, because then over the 2 days I've had a total of 4,000. Yeah? Does that make sense? So I can budget how I want. And that means that on average, I've still had I've had the 2,000 a day, which would equate to 14,000 through the week. You budget how you want to. If you want a more moderate approach, you can go with that number. Or if you just want to maintain, you can also go with that number. You can do secret option number C or D. You can do all of those. If on one day you want to go really, really aggressive, and the next day you maybe took it a little bit too hard and you felt like crap and you want to bump it up to the moderate one, you can do. If you then get to the weekend and you're like, I'm just going to go with maintenance calories for the weekend, go up to maintenance. The more you do at the aggressive one, the faster you get results, but the harder it is to do because it's more aggressive. The more you do at the maintain, the more you're going to maintain. It's easier to do because it allows you more food. You can do more, you can attack it with more occasions and all that sort of stuff. You can choose where you sit within that. You can change that from day to day, week to week, month to month, whatever you do. But whatever you do within that calorie amount is where it's going to manipulate your weight. And as I said, average is best. So take your averages across a broader time span. If you do 1 week aggressive, 1 week at maintenance, the next week at a moderate, so you've got aggressive, maintenance, moderate load, and then the next week you go maintenance, that's going to pull your average up more towards the maintenance side of things. So if you step on the scales or you use your metric to see where you've not gone and you're like, yeah, but I did that really aggressive week, it doesn't really matter because you've spent more time at the top end. Yeah? What I want you to do from here, just put a little star on the left side next to either the hare, the tortoise, or the tree. And that's going to be the speed that you're going to approach your fat loss, if fat loss is your goal. And just choose whichever one you want to stick with. If you've not done it before, maybe go in the middle and go with tortoise. Tortoise wins the race eventually. If you're confident with it and you've got maybe a shorter time frame, go with the hare. Or if you're currently just want to just do a food diary and you don't want to do any amount of calories, then kind of tree or maintenance, and you've got loads of room to see what your current diet looks like. Seeing where you currently are is going to be the secret to this. Don't leave here and only eat chicken salad and then fish and a rice cake. Just eat what you're doing, what you're currently doing, and then you might find that your current diet and what you're currently doing, exactly as you do with the McDonald's at 5 a.m. what you're currently doing will be maybe more towards the maintenance thing, which great news, if it's right near maintenance, you can just change a couple of things and bring it down towards the tortoise approach, which is more moderate. Yeah? You might find that you're way off maintenance and you're actually in a place where you start increasing body weight, in which case that might be an eye-opener that your current habits are not aligned with your goals, which don't take that as a bad thing. Don't think I've got to change everything. Start thinking, right, I'm drinking a litre of Coke every day. I'm going to switch out of a Diet Coke, like I said. Or I normally have 2 takeaways at the weekend. Could I change that to 1 takeaway? And I've saved myself a load of calories straight away there. Yeah, see where you currently are. See how it best meets your approach. Next one then. Muscle gain. If you are looking to gain muscle, you can gain muscle and lose fat at the same time, which is the dream, which is kind of your goal, right? Which is basically everyone's goal. Lose as much fat as possible, gain as much muscle as possible, change your aesthetics as fast as possible, look even sexier than you already do. Muscle gain comes down to 3 things. The materials that you put in, which is mainly protein, carbohydrates and fats do come into play. The stimulus that you create, which is your training, and then the recovery time that you spend doing that. which is overall just time and then the things that you do within that time to recover. And if we think of it in terms of like a construction analogy, if I was to hire a load of builders and have a house that's derelict and needs loads of work, but I give them no bricks, there's no way that they can then start making work, right? In the same way, if I have a ton of bricks, but then nothing to do in the house, nothing's going to get done. What's the point? I've got a load of bricks, I'm eating a load of protein, but I'm not creating any stimulus. Yeah? So we need all these three things to work together. We all already do a good amount of training. If muscle gain is your focus, just focus on some more things like squats, presses, pulls, your typical strongman stuff. Not the sweaty bit at the end, which is typically more fun. The first half of the workout, focus on that. And the more you do of that, the better. And I literally mean the more. If you do one PB squat, you're not getting stronger. You're just seeing what you're currently capable of. Which is why in my briefs I bang on all the time about don't fail today or don't go up to the max. It's times to test. But a lot of time when you try to gain muscle, you're better off doing what you can do more of rather than what you can do for one. Because one doesn't do anything. One just shows what you can currently do. Do more, just slightly below that. Your recovery time, it will take time to build muscle. Fat loss is way easier than building muscle. You need to spend a little bit of time for that change to happen. You also have to prioritize things like sleep because you need to give your body time to recover. And then you also have to prioritize time in between training. You can't just do 100 back squats, want stronger legs, finish and then go, I'm going to do 100 more back squats. Sounds stupid, doesn't it? As an extreme, there's no time in between the sessions. You need to manage what you do. We already do that in the program, but if you do want to do extra, don't just do squats every single day. Put time in between them. Maybe do squats on a Monday, squats on a Thursday. On the Tuesday, you could do pull-ups. On the Wednesday, you could do an extra cardio session. And then the Friday, you could do extra pushing if you want to do extras. Or if you've got something specific, don't just do bicep curls every single day. Put some time in between. And then protein. Protein is probably the most important macronutrient when it comes to training and muscle gain. So focus loads on protein. You're probably thinking, or some of you are definitely thinking, what about macros? I've heard this term macros before. Do I need to manage my macros? What about carbs? Do they make you fat? Does fat make you fat? Just forget about those. Carbs and fats are just kind of the same thing as protein, but protein gives you the ability to build muscle. Carbs and fats do kind of the same thing, but they're almost at this, where you are currently all at, doesn't really matter. I'd probably say even Mel isn't really in a position to start worrying about carbs and fats. So that means that probably you lot aren't in a position to start worrying about carbs and fats. Just start thinking calories and protein. Everything else is, I've skipped a little bit ahead. Everything else is down to preference. Your calories, the number that you've already got down, whether that's aggressive, moderate, or maintenance, is your total amount. In that amount, work out your protein. If you've got muscle gain as a focus, if it's fat loss, forget about protein. Just focus on the calories. Whatever protein, fats, and carbs make up within that, that's fine. The protein part, if you're gaining muscle, is the priority. You're going to hit your amount of protein, which we're going to go for in a second, within your calories. So let's say 800 calories is the amount of protein that I require for my body, and my total amount of calories for the day is 2,000. That means I've got 1,200 calories left to split between carbs and fats however I want. I really like cheese, so I might eat loads of cheese, which is more fats and less carbs. I might really like pastries, which is a mixture of both. I might really like potatoes, which is more carbohydrates. I've got a little bit of Irish in me. But I can just change that preference, yeah? So if your calorie amount means that the protein is actually this big, and I've got to have loads of protein, and I've got a little bit left in the calories, change it to preference to whatever you prefer. Whatever suits with your current diet, yeah? If we just skip backwards. Your protein then, a little bit more mass for you. On your sheet, you've got 1.6 and 2.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. If we can just do those two maths calculations, take your current body weight, times it by 1.6. Then scrap that calculation. You can write the answer down. And then times your current body weight by 2.6.
Say that again, so you times your body weight by 1.6.
Yes, so you'll do 91 times 2.6 or 1.6, both of them.
Both of them, yeah.
Yeah, and then you'll get two numbers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah? Let's have a look.
Right,
1.6.
there we go.
Yep, 145. And then you do the same for 2.6. Cool, right, you should have two numbers. Feel free to stand up and have a whirl around if you are a bit stiff or you've got some achy backs. You'll have two numbers there. You'll have your body weight times 1.6 and you'll have your body weight times 2.6. These two numbers aren't just random numbers that I've plucked out of the air. The first one, 1.6, is what's seen as your minimum requirement if you want to build muscle. If you want to maintain your current muscle, you can be below that. So don't be thinking, holy shit, I'm not eating enough protein. This is more where we need to be if we want to start growing muscle. And if you've got a muscle gain orientated goal, you need to at least be having 1.6 grams. The upper end of that, like super jacked bodybuilders that are probably having a little bit more help than just protein, go above 2.6 grams per kilogram. So it's safe to have even 3 grams per kilogram, which is why you can think of like Eddie Hall smashing a whole roast chicken for breakfast or whatever he does. He's a big dude, so he needs a little bit more protein. I would say 2.6 grams per kilogram is probably a little bit excessive for most people. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have that much protein. Think of it in terms of you're buying a load of paint to paint a wall and you buy too much, but you still just keep painting. And eventually you're going to paint that whole wall and just start with the paint on nothing. Some of that paint will go to waste. In the same way, some of that protein will go to waste. But you're definitely going to have a fully covered wall. Yeah? So if you want to make sure that from the stimulus that you're doing and the recovery time that you've got, you're going to build some muscle, you're going to buy as much material as possible because you're putting as much protein in as possible and you're not going to miss out on any potential muscle gain. The overall amount that you've just written down is the priority if you want muscle gain. You can choose anywhere between those two numbers. You can also go up and down every day between those two numbers. 1.6 grams is probably your minimum, which for most people is probably going to be somewhere between 120 to maybe 150 is typically where you will see that number sit at. If you want to maximize the amount of muscle that you gain within that amount, distribute it as many ways as possible. You could only utilize certain amounts of protein. After a certain point, your body can't really use it all at once. You have to drip feed it. The more you can separate that throughout the day, the better. So, for example, I've put distribute it 4+ ways. Breakfast, dinner, a snack, after training, at your tea, and then just before you go to sleep. That would be like the golden egg. For breakfast, I'd try and have, let's say my amount is 180. That's just a massive amount, but I'd have 30 grams at breakfast, which I could have eggs on toast with a protein shake. At dinner, I could have a whole portion of chicken with something else. For my snack, I could have a protein bar, or I could eat a packet of ham if I want to keep it simple. Post-training, again, I could maybe go with a shake because I don't want to eat. I just want to knock it back. For my tea, I could have double portion of cod that I'd normally have, or whatever other protein source I can think, a big steak. And then before I go to bed, I could have porridge, again, mix some protein flavour in with it, or I could have another meal that has a large amount of protein. I could have scrambled eggs, whatever it is to get that in. That means that throughout the whole day, my body is constantly working to utilise the protein. If you try and do this, but you don't hit your 1.6 grams, this is pointless. The overall amount that you have in a day is more important than distributing it out. So if you find it difficult to distribute it out because you've got way too much time to prep and think, or you've got other commitments, you've got kids to run around after, you've got a busy job, you're always here and there, you've not got the right amount of shopping in, don't worry, just have your total amount. Even if that means having a larger portion at night, that would be better to do than think, oh, I'm not distributing it throughout the day. There's no point in me getting my amount in. So 1.6 grams is your minimum. You can go all the way up to 2.6 if you want to really, really utilize it all. If you've got fat loss, don't have too much at the expense of having more calories. Keep it within your calorie window, and then distribute that protein out as much as you possibly can.
If you like fast, how does that work? So if you eat for like 12,
Yeah.
8, you get to eat and you don't eat after that.
So fasting, if you have a large period of time where you're not having protein, you're missing out on potential time where you could recover. So that element that was this. You've got a 12-hour window, so you don't eat from midnight to 12 o'clock in midnight till noon, yeah? 8 p.m. to 12. Cool. So that's great for weight loss because you're really, really controlling the amount of calories that go in there. But for muscle gain, you've got a period of time where you've hired a load of builders, but they're not working from 8 till 12, and they only work from 12 till 8. Now you could maximize that amount of time to build more muscle by having some amount of protein in that, yeah? People have different reasons for fasting. If we take it on just a fat loss perspective, it's great for controlling calories. It's not very good for muscle gain, yeah? As well as that, if you try and train after fasting, you've probably got very little energy, yeah? Yeah, exactly, yeah. When I first started training, I used to eat paleo, so I used to only eat natural foods, and I used to fast until 12 o'clock, and I used to train at 12 o'clock, so really I was fasting until like 1 o'clock. And it wasn't any wonder why my training was so crap, because I had no energy, I had nothing to eat, yeah? And that was what I thought I had to do. But I was reducing the time that I could recover. I was also reducing the amount of stimulus that I could create because I was dripping through workouts and not squatting to my capability because I was tired, and I wasn't putting enough protein in because I had such a short amount of time to put my protein in. Yeah, it's dead easy to make that mistake. But yeah, is there a reason why you fast, or is it just something you do?
One time in my life I picked up a lot of weight. And
Yep.
The fasting just came off.
It come off,
So
cool.
I maintained it like that.
Yep.
But I'm very like weak about strength. So when you become fasting, that's a little contradictory. Because
Yes, yeah,
I feel myself losing energy.
yeah.
Like this last week I got sick because I had no energy.
Yeah.
Because I'm not eating enough.
Yes, exactly. So what you could do then, so with what I've just said, using the principles, if you work out how much you consume over that 8-hour block that you eat in, if you say you eat 1,500 calories within that 8-hour block, you could distribute that over a 12-hour block. You're eating the same amount of calories, which means your weight won't change, yeah? And you could add the protein in within that amount, which then means you're going to start building muscle, and you should have more energy for working out then as well. You might find that it's too low amount of calories because then you feel like you need to eat more because you're eating through a longer period of time, because 1,500 calories is much nicer in one meal than it is separated over 3 meals. Yeah? Yeah, which a lot of people do. There's something called the warrior diet where you have it all in one meal. That meal is amazing, but getting to that meal is quite hard. Yeah? If anyone has any questions, by the way, please just shout them out. These are just some considerations for muscle gain. If you've got fat loss as your goal, as your main goal, don't let muscle gain be the thing that costs you to have more calories. Fat loss, muscle gain shouldn't be at the expense of fat loss. It'd be easier to lose the weight first and then build some muscle afterwards. Particularly if you haven't gone through a period, if you're quite early in your training age, I would say lose the weight first, then build the muscle. I'm in a position where, through experience, I've done that multiple times. But then what I usually do is at the period in the winter over Christmas, I'll put on as much weight as possible, and then I'll work it off. But it's easier for me to work it off because I've got higher capability of training harder, which then means I output more, and I've got more muscle mass to maintain. So getting the weight off is a little bit easier. But if you go on like stereotypical dirty bulk and just put on as much weight as possible, because you're like, I'm going to build as much weight as possible, build as much muscle as possible, but then you get loads of fat on top of that as well. Cardio then becomes really, really hard, and then you find that your output in workouts is really difficult, even though you might be a little bit stronger. So I'd say, if you want to prioritize fat loss, I personally would say for almost most people, that's the way to go first before you start then doing muscle gain. But then, like I said before, you can do both at the same time. Minimize the amount of calories that you consume on a daily basis, fit your protein amount in, and you will still build muscle whilst in that fat loss position. Mix your sources of protein, don't just have one. I tried to put as many examples in as possible when I distributed it before. I used fish, I used poultry, I used like beef, I used eggs. I talked about whey a little bit, you can supplement it, but if you can mix it up as much as possible, that is better. You'll get all the different profiles of protein, which is good. Don't just focus on protein being whey shakes. Yeah, protein is a macronutrient, not a shake, which most people think of as. Protein is on a daily basis, not weekly. Like with calories, I said you could budget as you wanted. Protein's different, you need it every day. You need to have that amount every day. So it's more of like a daily checklist rather than, oh, I didn't eat any protein yesterday, I'm going to double up the amount of protein the next day. You can't do that because it just goes to waste. Yeah, so if you don't hit a day, scratch it off, don't worry, be better the next day.
I've heard about like consuming like a certain amount of protein, like within an hour, like your body can only digest so much.
Yes.
Is that true? I swear it was like 25 grams of protein or something.
Yeah, so people used to think that there was an anabolic window after training. The reason why the people thought that was because bodybuilders would have a whey protein shake at the end of every workout immediately, and bodybuilders were getting massive. Now the reason why bodybuilders were getting massive wasn't because they was having a whey protein shake after a workout in terms of timing. What it meant was they went from having 100 grams of protein every day to having 160 grams of protein every day because they added a whey protein shake in. So what they did was they took the same bodybuilders, said don't have the protein shake after the workout, have it at night. When you finish your workout, it's been a few hours, and they still continue to grow. So the timing what you have it is irrelevant. In terms of safety, it's fine to have loads of protein. Your body just won't process it. You'll do very, very well, unless you've got kidney issues, to have too much protein and cause yourself some problems. You good? Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm going to say if you need to shoot, you need to shoot, because I know you've got work, haven't you, as well? Yeah, cool. Spread, that isn't Nutella. That is how you distribute it out throughout the day. Spread your protein out as much as you possibly can throughout your meals. You'll get more from that. But it isn't essential if you're not hitting the out. It's optimal, but not essential. And this won't work with the building analogy, like I said. If you're not creating enough stimulus, so you're not training enough, you're not hitting workouts well enough, if you're coming in fasted and you're really, really tired and you're not training well enough, but you're consuming loads of protein, you're not going to build any muscle. So you need to have all those three elements in to do that. You've already done your protein amounts. Just write down a training frequency. That should be as a week. So write down how many sessions you want to do in a week, or how many you're going to set as your plan to do within a week. So it could be 3 if you're really new to training. It could be 6, and you could maybe treat 2 sessions as GritStone CrossFit session, extra session at the end, 20 minutes of work, doing bicep curls. That could class as 2 sessions. Yeah? It's very subjective as to what you want to count it as, but just set yourself a little bit of a goal as to how many times you're going to, in your plan, train. If it's muscle gain, I think you need to be training at least 5 times, because that will give you enough spread to create as much stimulus as possible. Yeah? And that 5 times could be Monday you train, Tuesday you don't train, Wednesday you do Miko, and then you do some bodybuilding stuff at the back. That's another training session. And then Thursday you don't train, Friday you do a little bit of training, and then Saturday you do some training. You can do your little sessions around that. It doesn't have to be shitloads of CrossFit, as much as that would be nice. And then commit to a minimum amount of sleep. Unfortunately, I know we all have pressures. I know some of us don't sleep so well. Some of us like to go on TikTok at night, which is Soph. If you're watching this, you go on too much TikTok. If you aren't prioritizing sleep, you're not giving time for yourself to recover. And that's the best time for you to recover, because while your brain is switched off, your body's doing what it needs to do to recover in a sense of repairing your muscles and building muscle. So commit to a minimum amount of sleep. Whatever that is for you, just do that. There's no point in me saying, this is the recommended amount of sleep. Just commit to a minimum and just say that's the minimum you're going to do, given whatever your current pressures are. If you sleep, and there you go. So that will be a big problem. You might be creating loads of stimulus, you might have loads of materials, but you're giving your builders no time to work. Yeah. So interestingly, I can't remember what the acronym is now, but basically, it's something like non-sleep deep rest is just as beneficial, although insanely boring. But if you lie there still with your eyes closed and go into deep rest, but it isn't sleep, you still get some of the turnover from recovery. So I know that it won't be fun, but force yourself to stay still and try to just lie down and recover. And that's almost as good as sleeping. Yeah? Going to... I'm only joking. I'm only pulling your leg. Right, performance. Ideally, performance is everybody's goal. Everyone wants to perform better. If you perform better, you build more muscle, you lose more fat, you perform better because of that, because you're stronger, you weigh less, your body's better at performing, you then perform better, you then get more muscle, you then lose more fat, you then perform better. It's all this positive cycle. So performance is a really, really good thing to focus on, but it requires so many elements, and it also requires a strong head, because if you come in and you perform not very good for a day, that doesn't matter. But you walk out being like, what was the point in that? Your body doesn't know whether you've done a really good session or a really bad session. It just knows that you've put the reps in, you've done the work, your heart rate's gone up, your muscles have worked in some way. Performance is a really, really good thing to focus on. And if you remove your own expectations from it and just say, I'm going to get in and I'm going to do it, whether it's ideal or not, whether I've had a bad day and someone beeped at me on the way in and I'm really pissed off and I'm not really going to train that hard because I'm fed up, or you didn't get much sleep last night and you're yawning during a nutrition seminar, but you trained twice already. Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. You're just going to come in and train. Some training is better than no training. Performance relies on you being consistent. You'll have some really good days. You might have some not so good days, but they're all good days. When you do training, focusing on the highest possible quality will give you the best possible result. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if it isn't high quality, or what you consider it to be high quality, it isn't worthwhile. You should still come in and train. But focusing on being intentional in your training and putting in as high quality as possible is super important. A bit like my example before of just doing a 1 rep max back squat every time you come in isn't high quality training. But putting the reps in of the non-fancy stuff is what gets you the results. Elements of performance. You need a high level of energy, so you need enough fuel. Fat loss will not facilitate performance. If you come in and you've got less energy and your aim is to lose fat and you don't perform as well in here, that's okay, because you're trying to put less in than what you're trying to put less in than what's going out. So there's a balance in the scales there that do make it difficult. There's times where if I'm focusing on reducing my body fat, I will come in and I have to be okay with not hitting my numbers on my lift or not really doing the best a session as I possibly could, as intense as I could. But that's okay, because I'm trying to lose fat. I'm trying to give myself less energy than I'm trying to put out. But again, that isn't performing. If I wanted to go to a competition or I wanted to continue to hold the title as the strongest brother, I need to make sure that I've got a lot of energy. Yeah? So there it comes to fuel. You need highest levels of quality. We need to make sure that we're being active all of the time. And in that activity, making sure that it's the highest quality that we can do. You already do a lot of training here, but you also need to supplement that with constant activity. Do you know an athlete that sits down on a desk all day? Probably not. There is not many people that are like that. So you could be the person that stands up at the desk, and you might look like that weirdo when you go in, I'm just going to go for 10 flights of stairs, and your colleagues are like, what on earth are you doing? But that doesn't matter, because they don't understand that you've got better goals than just sitting down and just working. you're kind of breaking the norm. Yeah? They don't know what your goals are, and they probably won't support you because you're doing something that's weird. In the same way that if you told them you attended a nutrition seminar at 1 p.m. on Saturday, they'd be like, why on earth are you doing that? But they don't understand. That's okay for them, but it's not okay for you. You just stick with what you need to do. Change the quality of what your output or your activities are. That's for non-exercise and exercise. The highest levels of recovery, lots of sleep and lots of materials to recover. If you want to perform, you need to rest enough, but then you also need to fuel enough. Like I've just said, fat loss won't facilitate performance. If I'm not fueling enough in terms of carbohydrates, fats and protein, which make up enough calories for me then to perform really well, I need to make sure that I'm fueling and resting enough because they both work together. And then at a sustainable frequency. Something that I see all the time, which probably some of you are going to do today, is you're going to go home and be like, that's it. I'm going to never have chocolate again, or I'm never going to have a takeaway again. I'm never going to drink again. That isn't sustainable probably. You probably need to find something that's a little bit more sustainable, which is why I've said work from your baseline. I remember I worked with someone once who I wanted them to increase their output. The next day they went out and ran and walked a half marathon. And they're like, I've done it. Like, I've done so well. Do you know what they did for the rest of the week? Nothing. Yeah, exactly. It's not sustainable. Yeah? I would have been way happier if they would have gone, you know what I did yesterday? I went out on a 10-minute walk in my lunch break. And I could do that every single day. That is way more, that's music to my ears. It's not. But if you're telling me you're going to absolutely kill yourself and then do naught for the rest of it because you've killed yourself and it's not sustainable, it's almost pointless. Yeah? The chicken and the egg, I kind of covered this already, but fat loss will compromise performance and muscle gain, but it can also facilitate it because the lighter you are, the more you could probably do, the better you are. But again, they can work against each other. They also can help each other. Muscle gain is the same. If you're looking for fat loss, you might not be concentrating on the amount of muscle that you want to build, or if you're doing both at the same time, they will contradict each other. It might mean results are slower. In the same for performance, if I'm focusing on muscle gain and I'm coming in and I'm so sore and I can't then perform, they all work against each other. So if you are going to perform, those two things kind of need to be at a compromise where, because performance takes more attention and time, because those things work against each other, you might get less results. But that's okay because you're committing to it for a long amount of time. It takes a little bit of compromise in terms of seeing maybe the scales go up and down, maybe having good days, having bad days, because you're not focusing on the one thing. Fat loss is one of the easiest ways to see results. If I could take you all today and just say, you're going to go away and do this, and you will do that, I can guarantee fat loss. If you go away and just control your calories, like I've said, and I can make sure, if I could somehow follow you around every single day, every minute that you're awake, and just be like, you're doing this, fat loss will happen. Because that's the easiest one to control. Muscle gain is then a little bit harder. Performance is then even harder because it requires all of those things to work together. So if you are going to go for performance, be okay with maybe not seeing fat loss results or muscle gain results straight away. I've covered some of these already. In addition, as the little bits, carbohydrates and hydration are really, really important. You need enough carbohydrates to fuel workouts, particularly intense workouts. And then you need to be hydrated enough. A bit like if a car doesn't have oil, it's not going to work. Water's kind of our oil. We need to make sure that we're hydrated enough, because dehydration is the biggest factor in performance decline. You could be the fittest person in the world and the most fueled person in the world, but if you're dehydrated, you're screwed. Your body just won't work anymore. Protein and adequate sleep to recover, we spoke about that. Focused training, you already do a lot of CrossFit, but maybe the extra stuff, add that in. If you've got a fat loss goal, your focused training should be extra cardio. Just at the end of every session, do a 20-minute bike extra, go on a walk on every other day. Focus training cool. If muscle gain is it, focus on your lifts, focus on your squats, presses, your pulls. If performances, make sure that you're coming in and giving your all in classes, you're fueled enough, you're recovered enough, you're distributing your work as it is, and you're not killing yourself every single day. And then, like I've said, you need to be content with probably constantly reassessing, constantly questioning whether you're doing the right thing, working out, having a good day, have a bad day, I need to change what I've done on the previous day to make sure I have a better day. So performance can be a little bit more tricky. You can write this down on your sheets. This is going to be one of the last things you write down. Choose a time frame to commit. If you're not going to commit to performance, that's okay, but choose a time frame now to commit to either fat loss or muscle gain, and just say, this is how long I'm going to try this plan for, or this approach for, to start seeing some sort of result. So it could be, I've got a holiday coming up in a month, so I'm going to go aggressive on the fat loss side of things, and then I'm going to look as best as I possibly can for that month. That's a really motivating thing. It might be that I've got nothing coming up, and I've got loads of time. I might give it 6 months, in which case I might do a mixture. That's fine. Just think of a time frame in mind that you're going to stick to some of these approaches. On the measurables, choose something that you're going to measure. So you might have changed now from the start. It might be, you know what, I'm going to measure it by my clothes and my lifts in the gym. It could be your scale weight if you want to go with something simple like that. It could be pictures. It could be your food diary. It could be I'm only going to track my protein because I'm only going to bother about muscle gain, so I'm only going to focus on protein. It could be I'm only going to track my calories and what the macros are within that.
When you gain muscle, it's not gain weight.
No, you possibly, yeah. So
It's so confusing. How do you measure if you're actually gaining muscle or weight?
yes, exactly. So being on the scales will show what your overall weight is.
Yeah.
So muscle, fat, bones, what you've eaten, what's not come out yet, all that sort of stuff. What current clothes you're wearing. So if you use scale weight as an indication as to whether you're gaining muscle, if the scales are going up, you're probably gaining muscle, but you're probably gaining all other areas. Yeah? So I would say for muscle gain, I'd use pictures. I'd use performance things. So like, if you're doing it in BoxMate anyway already, so you're tracking your squats, tracking your pull-ups, tracking all that sort of stuff, so you can see there. Pictures, lifts, and then measurements. You can measure the size of your muscles, even though size doesn't equate to strength. So I would maybe measure your waist and your hips, your arms, yep, your legs, and you can just choose. If you are going to do body measurements, again, message me. I've got a little guide that you can go through. For fat loss, you want to do the smallest part of your hips and the widest part of your waist, and you want that ratio to get bigger. Even if both go down, you want your waist to go down less than your hips are going down, so the ratio is getting bigger. Or the opposite, you want your hips to actually get bigger and your waist to go in more, and that would indicate fat loss. If you just want to build muscle, you want a bigger chest, choose a point that you're going to measure. For guys, it's dead easy. You just measure across your nipples around your back. Girls, that's a little bit harder, for given reasons. Biceps, go halfway between your elbow and your shoulder. The first time you do it, take a picture of where the tape measure is, or find something like a mole or something like that you can go over, because that's never going to go anywhere. You can then measure the same point every single time. Because if I measure down here 1 week, and then measure up here the next week, I'm like, my biceps got massive in a week. I've just measured a different place, and the measurement's almost pointless. So find a standard thing that you can measure. And then the controllables, give me something nutrition-wise that you're going to control. I'm going to consume less calories. I'm going to consume more protein. I'm going to make sure there's protein at every meal. Something to do with nutrition. Then something to do with training. You're going to train however often. You're going to do an extra cardio session once a week. You're going to do 3 extra cardio sessions once a week. Whatever it is, give me something that you can control regardless of what the outcome is. Right. Quick question. I'm dreading asking this question. Is anyone more confused than when we started? No? Cool, right. Have you got, everyone feel like they've got a decent idea as to where to take something at least? Yeah? Cool. If you don't, that's cool. Pick my brains about it and I can help you out, I don't mind. Because there is so many balls to juggle in this that it can get a little bit confusing if you don't know where you're going. But remember, I did say at the start, it is super simple in terms of numbers and then what you can control. Yeah? If you just focus on those things, if you mess up one day, that's okay. Just on average is what's best. Just to quickly recap. You've got your plan. You're going to find out what your current position is by finding your baseline. That could be just doing a simple food diary. And then you should have some way within that sheet as to what you will measure your actions and then how you progress. So you could say, I'm going to keep track of how many times I train each week. That's your actions. And then as a result of me training that many times that week, how did I progress? That could be box mate. Same for food. I'm going to eat this many calories. And then you can track your progress by your pictures, your scale weight, your measurements. You should have something that you can do from your current position, how you'll measure what you're doing to change that and how it changes. You should have a goal in terms of calories and or protein. Your approach in terms of the speed that you're going to approach fat loss, or your focus in terms of how you're going to gain muscle or perform. And then ways again that you can measure and reflect. Super important to measure because me, for example, I really, really don't like checking my bank balance because I don't want to see what's in it, because that means I've then got to measure it and I've probably got to face up to the reality that I can't spend the money that I want to spend. That is a way of avoiding it. In the same way, it's an easy way to avoid how much you're eating by not measuring what you're eating or not measuring your weight on the scales because you don't want to see what the number is. That's okay if you don't want to do that. In the same way, I'm probably not going to check my bank balance because I don't want to see how much money I haven't got. But that doesn't mean that's going to be the best way to change something. So I need to find some way of measuring that I feel comfortable with, or I need to own up to it. And then I reflect, stepped on the scales, the weight has gone up, what the fuck? Right, I need to try even harder. Step off, next week, step on, the scales have gone down, mint, they've gone down, and what I'm doing is working. I'm now motivated to keep doing exactly what I'm doing. So no matter what the number was, I've took a positive thing from that. Yeah, I can reflect on it in some way. In the same way, I didn't hit my squats today. That's okay, you still got it done. Next week you come in, you might hit them, buzzing. I need to remember that when I don't hit my squats, that's all right, because the next week I hit them anyway. So now all that bad feeling is irrelevant because now I feel really, really good. So find something in ways that you can reflect.